Hey gang, Lou here from Jersey Shore Fabricators. Whether you're working for yourself or you're doing a repair for yourself, you're going to come to a point where you're going to be up against a budget. Sometimes it's a hard budget. Case in point, got a 1989 Grand Wagoneer in the shop. Truck's pretty clean. Customer just needs a little bit of work. He needs the rocker panels replaced. Problem is he doesn't have a whole lot of money, and he's trying to sell it and he wants to present it the best he can. So what do? Well, do you replace the whole rocker panel? Do you replace what you need? Sometimes on a vehicle, you don't have to replace the whole rocker panel. You can just replace sections of it. It's going to save you a little bit of time. It's money-wise, except for labor, it's not going to save you any money. You have to buy a rocker, so you have the whole thing. But it's the difference between an hour-long repair and 3 or 4 hours of cutting and cutting lines and cutting spot welds. So I'm going to walk you through the process, how to do a good, cost-effective repair. We use cost-effective instead of cheap, because, cheap. Okay, so let me show you what I'm talking about. This rocker panel is not in bad shape, but right here you can see some bubbling. And with this Sharpie, you can see it's, well, it's a little hollow, but back here is really good. And up front is really good. So really all we need to do is section this out right here. It's going to be the same thing on both sides. There's already a big hole on the other side from somebody putting their foot through it. No, it wasn't me. It was the customer. But to do something like this, it does require a little bit of prep. You're not just going to slap a panel on it, bondo it, and send it on its way. We're going to be treating the metal on the inside with some kind of a rust encapsulator, whether it's from Eastwood, whether it's Por 15. And then we'll come back and we're actually going to paint this from here down, and we're gonna blend. This is the factory color. It's Dover gray, I believe they called it on the Grand Wagoneers. But we're gonna color blend this all the way down, and it's going to be a seamless repair. More importantly, it's going to be a good repair, and most importantly for the customer, it's going to be a cost-effective repair. Okay, so now what I've done here is I've laid out with tape where I want to cut. This sounds like very solid metal from here to here, and that's where we want to get. We want to get beyond the rust, and we want to get to where there's good solid metal to weld to. You want to try to get these lines as straight as possible. I wear bifocals, so my lines may not be exactly straight, but we can work that out with the patch piece later. I'm cutting on the body line, or I should say on this curved part on the body line here, because when we go to weld this back together, we want to make sure we have something straight as a reference. And also when we go to weld this and we go to grind down the welds, this whole thing will just blend into this curve that's here, and it'll just sort of disappear after it gets painted. And for this I'm going to be using just a regular 4.5 inch cutoff wheel. I probably may end up using a little 3.5 inch air cutoff wheel. And then after that I'm going to show you the oh so fun project of getting out a bunch of spot welds. Okay, now when you're doing this, you want to have this proper protection. So have a full face shield, earmuffs, leather gloves. There's a lot of sparks. Very sharp wheel turning very fast. Just be careful, take your time, and hopefully you don't get hurt. Alright, so it looks like we got a little lucky here. The bottom of it's not rotted out, so it could be surface treated, but right here, there's one spot weld. So once we get rid of that, this whole panel will fall away, and then this will make a perfect patch panel template. There's a lot of different tools on the market for cutting spot welds. I prefer to use these. These are actually hole cutters. They're designed for sheet metal, and I've cut up to 3/8 with them. but they're called Rotorbroach, and they're made by a company called Blair. It's about $60 for the set, and then they have a set for doing bigger holes up to 1.5 inches, and they're not expensive. They're about $60 for the entire set. And when you look at the cutter head, there we go. When you look at the cutter head on it, you'll see that it's diamond cut carbide. I'll show you how these work. Okay, so first order of business is to take a center punch and do a center punch right in the middle of where the spot weld is. Then you're going to take your spot weld cutter. I have mine on the end of a air drill. And then just get after it. So you want to be careful when you're going. You don't want to go through the metal that's behind it. You just want to go through the top sheet metal. Just want to take your time. You'll feel it when it pops, and you can just check your progress as you go. You see I already started to go through there. So now you just kind of peel the rest of the metal away. Okay, now once you get that cut open, you can see what you actually have to deal with in here. Yeah, it's a mess. Alright, so we're on the driver's side. You can see this is just an absolute mess in here. I've come in and cut out the spot welds that were on this support. Now, it's spot welded on the bottom to the inside of the rocker. The problem is, there ain't a whole lot of this rocker left. So, what we're going to end up doing is cutting this off. We're going to make a flange, so we're going to make a nice butt weld. Seam seal that. We're going to break it on the bottom, and then where the new rocker is going to go on, we'll punch holes in it so it can be plug welded. And believe it or not, it'll be just as good as new. This here, although it looks rusty, is really quite solid, so we're just going to treat that with rust encapsulator. It'll stop the rust in its tracks, and it'll still be a solid piece of metal. But this side's going to take a little bit of work. There's a support piece here. There's 3 spot welds, so we'll have to cut those off, make a new support. Okay, so once you got this big hole in the side of your truck, you're going to take your repair panel, and you're going to cut, and you're going to trim, and you're going to trim. Now, one of the things that I learned over the years, and I learned from another fabricator, car builder, a guy by the name of Kevin Tetz, T-E-T-Z. Look him up, he's got some great videos. Works for Eastwood. Is you do what's called sneak up on it. Meaning that don't cut the piece to what you think is the right size. Leave it a little big. You can always take the metal off. You cannot put it back on, no matter how hard you try. I've tried. You want a nice tight fit, but you want to leave a little bit of gap going around so that your welding wire, your MIG wire, has some place to go. You can use a cutoff wheel, you can use a grinder, but for the last little bit that you're going to be doing, I really suggest, if you don't have one, they're like 20 bucks, go buy yourself a nice little grinder like this, air grinder, with roll lock 36 grip, and you can use that to just ever so slightly clean up the edges and make that little gap that you want there, about 30 thousandths. I weld with 30,000 or 35,000 wire. It's a little much for steel, but with all good steel, you can certainly do it without breaking anything. Okay, so once you get the edges ground down, you don't want to make it a knife point. You want to leave the bottoms flat, all the edges flat. You want to get all the little metal shavings and all that off of there. The thinner you make the metal, the harder it's going to be to weld. So that's why you want to leave it flat. You want to leave this the same thickness as everything else you're doing. So at this point, everything's fitting really good. Everything's looking really good. I had my QC department come in and check it. She's giggling in the background now. So at this point, all that's left to do is the final prep. And basically, again, you're going to take your roll lock, strip down to metal all the way around. You want to get the seed coat off of here. Same thing around the welding surface on the vehicle. You want to get all that clean and down to bare metal. Wipe it off with acetone. Don't use brake cleaner. You can use brake cleaner, but you have to use a non-chlorinated kind. And if you don't know what you have, if you use chlorinated brake cleaner when you start welding, you make a poisonous gas and you'll end up either really, really sick or dead. That's not a joke. It's happened. It's a very real thing in the welding world. So just use plain old acetone and you'll be fine. Okay, so now once you're ready to weld, you want your piece fitted in there. We want to throw a couple of tacks on just to hold it in place. And as you go around, you just want to do attack, attack, attack. Not attack it, but you want to put tacks all over the place. The reason being is that you'll end up warping the metal, you'll distort the metal, and then you're going to have a whole new set of problems on your hand, along with the dog. So just take your time. You know, I say it all the time because I mean it. Just take your time. It's not a race. You know, you work at your own pace, you'll get there. You keep on going until all the tacks are in, and then you go back and grind everything down. So now one thing I tell people, don't be afraid to beat the metal into submission. Sometimes it's going to move as you're welding. Grab your old body hammer, move it back to where it wants to be. It'll go.
Okay.
And when you're welding overhead like this, there's not a whole lot that you can do to keep from getting burned, so just try to be careful and not set yourself on fire. Once all the grinding stops, clean up the area, get rid of the tools, you're done. What you should be left with is a nice smooth surface. You shouldn't be able to feel any deviations, elevation deviations anyway. Your next step is to wipe everything down either with wax and grease remover or plain old acetone. Now when it comes to doing body filler or doing body work, this is not a tutorial on how to do body work. If you don't know how to do body work, if you've never done it before, there are a gazillion other channels out there that get into doing body work. Okay, so let me talk to you a minute about masking. It's the worst job in the world. It sucks. It's not as bad as dealing with rust, but it still sucks. I've been at this for about 2.5 hours now, and I've bagged the entire truck, plastic inside and outside the doors, and then we also, down there where we're going to be painting, we left that part exposed, because that part still has to be prepped. But before we start sanding and before we start priming, now's the time to get it bagged, because you don't want all that junk going inside the vehicle. It's going to get in the cracks and crevices. It's going to take you 6 years to get it out. Just remember, it sucks. You're going to have to spend some money here. You know, I'm using an actual body bag from a body shop, you know, for a car. But the white plastic is just regular generic white plastic sheet. Drop cloth from Home Depot, I think it cost me like $10 for 50 feet or 60 feet or something like that. It's cheap enough. You have to buy masking tape. Make sure you take time to mask off all the moldings. You don't want to be trying to wipe all that down. The more prep you do now, All right, now you've done all your welding, you've done all your grinding, you've done body work, you've done etch priming on bare metal, you've done filler primer after that and sanded that down. You went to the store, you bought the paint, you shot it, and you end up with a pretty good repair. And when you look down the side of the truck, it's bad with this camera, but everything is smooth. There's no deviations. There's no telling where the repair was. Now, we did paint from here down. Everything else that you see that may look wrong, customer didn't want that painted. All we did was what he said. And again, this job was done cost effectively, so unfortunately there wasn't a whole lot of money to go through and do all the stuff that we wanted to do. So as I said before, the point of this was not so much to teach you how to do body work or teach you how to do welding, but just give you an overview of what it takes to do that kind of work. If you've ran a welder at any point in your life, if you've ever used spackle or Bondo or body filler, you can do this. Will it come out this good? I don't know, it's up to you. You have to take the time. You make it right, it's your job. If it's something that you want to tackle, go for it. We always encourage people, go out there and work on your cars, do it yourself. If you can't, well, feel free to bring it by. And if you're not around here, go seek out a professional wherever it is that you live. I hope you learned something. I hope it was a little entertaining for everybody. There's a little knowledge to be had. Until we see you the next time, peace.